Let's see, agenda. I think Rachel, I really, she is on our committee. I can find our roster. I just couldn't find our report initially that we had started. So, Myron, you're in charge.
Okay, that's what. How was everybody this afternoon? So we met. I think most of you, all of you know, we met. Committee chairs met yesterday, and I presented with some and a big assist from Martha. Our report, but what they want us to kind of do is home in, and this is the purpose of this meeting, or the additional purpose of this meeting is to hone in on the 3 or 4 big ideas, recommendations, basically, that we would put forward as a committee. And so what we found in the discussion, and Martha, feel free to jump in with amendments or additions as needed. What we found in the discussion is that there's some of the committees, and this was expected, there was a lot of overlap or some overlap. And so what we don't want to do with our committee, I don't think any committee wants this, is to, where the work has been done and put forward by another committee that's, maybe situated a little better, we don't necessarily want to repeat a recommendation that like another committee may be making. The one specific issue, if I recall correctly, there has been some work, and I think we just talked about it, on disabled voters and access. So what we need to decide, and we kind of honed it down to, I guess, maybe 3 or 4 big ideas, and then there's another couple.
To show you what you presented yesterday. Do you want me to show
that would actually be helpful. One, we know we want to do something, a recommendation involving felons voting. Let me
Can
blow
you
this
see,
screen.
or can you only see undergraduate certificate in video production?
I see what I wrote.
Okay, yeah. Good. Good. All
right. So we know we want to do something about translation, language translation services. Martha, we said, I know felon voting, college voting, and when I say voting, I'm talking about as it says there, access to voting, facilitate access. And Martha, what else did we hone in on?
Well, first you started with talking about working with the Civic Education Committee.
That's right.
You talked about improving accessibility for disabled voters.
Mm-hmm.
The language translation, felon voting, and college student voting.
Mm-hmm.
And so
right.
I guess the question is there anything in particular? So I was wondering, Myron, if we had a chance, and I wasn't sure that we did give felon voting a full chance, probably because I talked too much. Well, maybe I didn't, but I don't know if we really talked about whether we want to, other than education.
Right, make a recommendation as to, for lack of a better term, lessen the requirements currently in place for former felons to vote. Right now, it's, you have to be clear of probation and parole. In other words, you can't just be out of prison, out of the physical lockup. There's additional requirements. So do we want to make a recommendation on that? And one thing I suggested is, if we don't want to go that strong, what we could do is, when we talk about our research and background, we could present some relevant stats that show the relative advantages or disadvantages. We'll focus on the advantages of that. For instance, reentry experts will tell you that as much as you can make a former felon's life similar to everyone else's life, and voting would be a part of that, it helps reduce recidivism and helps everyone in that sense. The other thing, Martha, I know you had brought up, was the ERIC. Do we want to make some kind of statement about should recommending perhaps that North Carolina pursue this ERIC initiative, which there was momentum towards it, then it kind of got caught up in partisan politics, and but do we think that's worth making part of our report, a recommendation or some statement about Eric? And again, that could be another situation where, in lieu of making a hard recommendation, we could, in weaving in our research, show the advantages of a program like Eric. So what
And
we want to do,
disadvantages, right? I mean, so,
correct,
or I don't
or
know. Yeah,
disadvantages, right.
that's a good approach if we wouldn't want to go full on recommending it. So you're saying first we need to make sure we've got our big ideas straight.
Yeah. So let's
Second, do you need to decide felon voting, and then third, we'll talk about Eric.
correct. Yep. So let's now, y'all see where we're headed here. Are we? I want to open up the floor. Are we in agreement that, these should be our big ideas? And don't all
Such a
speak at,
talkative group.
yeah, don't all speak at once, please.
This is Ted. I agree.
Hey, Ted.
I think the and apologies, I can't get my daughter's camera to work, so don't take that the wrong way.
No problem.
The fear being only redundancy for the overall report. So, but I agree that those should be the topics, and I'm glad to see Eric in that conversation.
And I'll talk to you a little bit about, I did provide the slides, but I'm happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability about that. I don't know that I'm as worried about Myron as of overlaps. Well, I mean, if we've already done, I mean, the fact was that Ted had already put together a pretty comprehensive little bit about disability and voting. So my thinking on that is we move that forward. That was really the big one, Ted. That there were, and apparently Tara has one, and that was just my thinking on that. So Mary Ellen has her hand up. I'll go ahead and call while you're writing. Mary Ellen.
Go ahead, Mary Ellen.
Okay, what I wanted to say is I too am particularly interested in that Eric, rejoining Eric, since the state, previously was a member, and Eric does address one of the primary complaints that people are dead in voting, people are registered in other states in voting, and I think it's something that would help to show the level of voter fraud that we do or do not have. I would be very much in favor of that. The others, I think, are a given. As far as for the disabled voters, I'm not familiar with the work of the other committee, but I could see that might be because it's physical rather than the way that the other employments are. It might fall into another category, but the other things that we have there, I think, are very worthy. College students, where I sit in Greensboro, we've had quite a problem here with all the college students we have, getting them voter access when you have, the precincts cut right in the middle of a university campus. That's pretty complicated in accessing your vote. So I think that's very important.
Okay, great. Anyone else? And just as a quick, go ahead. Who was that? Is that Ted or Tony?
This is Tony. Can I jump in, Byron?
Yeah, Tony. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
I agree with the ones you have, and also I appreciate Martha's slides on Eric, and I would be supportive of adding joining Eric to it. Can I just suggest maybe one brief sentence at the top, and that is just suggesting that curbside voting is a best practice that needs to be implemented across the state.
Okay. All right.
Would that be?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
And so Martha, help me here and rest of the
I-
committee, please. I have as our recommendations, just the general subject line, so to speak, disability, college voting, felon voting, language access, and Eric. Is that the list we're working with as our recommendations?
I agree.
Okay. Okay.
Anybody, I guess I'm not technically a member, but I think that's represents the discussions we've had,
Okay.
right?
And Eric, keeping in mind that Eric may or may not be a recommendation, but it's certainly, we want to include it in our report. As we also want to include in our report information about former felons voting and how it looks in different states to allow, looser restrictions than what we have here, because there are states like Florida that's even more restrictive than what we have here. So we do not have the most restrictive, and of course some places don't allow former felons to vote. So North Carolina does do that. Now the other piece, or one of the other, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut anyone off. Who else wanted to speak to whether they think this is a good list or any addendums, anything to add or suggestions?
May I ask, I don't know that I've heard this discussed in any of our conversations or other conversations.
Mhm.
Martha and Myron, how shoot for the moon should these recommendations be? I mean, to what extent should we temper
Yeah,
what might be our 100% recommendation with the reality of
political
the
reality.
audience?
Yeah.
Is it important to stake a claim and know full well that we won't get to maybe the place where we really do open up access to former felons, for instance, just for the sake of being on record as having made this recommendation in hopes that in years to come we might move that ball a little bit further? What do you two say to that about how we shape the tone of how strongly we make suggestions?
Let me put it this way, Ted. I sincerely wish I could be more helpful in terms of that, because that really is the sort of what I've been trying to sort out. How shoot for the moon we should be. Martha or Jennifer, do y'all have anything to add to?
So I think it's my take that what comes out of this discussion of this committee comes
Mhm.
out of the committee. So if we want to put forward with a knowledge of some of the things that I told you and that I can talk about more, for example, Eric,
Mhm.
as a possibility, even though right now it is not something that a lot of red states are doing, as you saw from the slides.
Right.
There's worry that that's, like I said, a recruiting tool for Democrats. And
Mhm.
it's, so I did see one study that said it is not. There's worries about privacy, and that the discussion of that comes from someone I respect highly. So we have to understand the pros and the cons, but if we want to make that recommendation, if the committee feels it's right, we should.
Okay.
Thinking about felon disenfranchisement, yeah, that the felons, the justice involved persons, the felons, so right now can't vote until after they're done with parole and probation.
Mhm.
And if the committee thinks that things should be different based on, and I can show you exactly, so you, Myron, I have notes from here,
Mhm.
from that you wrote up, which I can show everybody, and we can talk about what we think about that. So the idea is that there's going to be people of different partisanships and beliefs about this, and that what we come to after discussion, that's what we should do.
Okay.
So it seemed to me, and Myron, maybe that there weren't a lot of reaching for the sky sort of recommendations.
No, yeah, that was not, yeah, that was my take as well, Ted. There did not seem to be a lot of shoot for the moon as you expressed it.
Jennifer, do you have a take on that you want to share, please?
Well, I think what we heard yesterday when all the different committee chairs got together is that your take on language and on felons, former felons being able to vote again, that's not being covered by anybody else. I
By
think that's-
anybody else, right?
Yeah, so that's really important.
Mhm.
The other thing is on Eric, you don't necessarily have to say we want Eric to be reinstated. You could say there should be some system by which we compare with other states their voter list to make sure there's not duplication, right?
Right.
So you don't
Right.
have to necessarily name a specific product because
Mhm.
we're not software specialists. But you can say we highly recommend that you
Okay.
have something in place.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
but we want
great.
it to be the right one. I mean, the one that's actually nonpartisan and based on science and not the one that's not, do we not?
Well, you can put the requirements without having to name a specific existing system, right? It's like we don't want to recommend software. We don't, we
I got you. I got
you know
you.
what I mean? You can
Eric is
say
not
if it meets these
software.
criteria. I know, but I mean, we
I
can
mean, it's an
say,
existing system in use very widely in the library
Sure.
world for information gathering. And it's not political in any way.
Yeah.
Um,
but the
The thing is,
perception,
it's gotten a patina of politics now.
yeah.
yeah.
So you can
So we
also,
need to be aware of that.
you can also say some people on our committee felt very strongly that Eric should be reinstated.
Mhm.
However,
Mhm.
we all
Okay.
agree that something should be, right? You can do both
Mhm.
and. Both and.
Thank you. That's great. Thanks. I love the politician with the.
And I can
Works for
say
me.
that the word patina is my early contender for word of the meeting. Very nice. The other piece of this, now, I also want to give you additional context. So I'll be presenting this, and each presenter, we were told, would have 10 minutes. They do want it to be PowerPoint, which I think is a good idea, just to make it very clear. So now the draft, of course, doesn't have to conform to that 10 minutes. It can be, as long as we feel we need to go on about it. But one thing the draft does need is a way, and I need guidance on this, how to effectively incorporate the great research this committee has done. Because that's what gives it grounding. I used to watch, and maybe this is a confession, the reality show Judge Mathis, and the defendant that won was always the one that had some paperwork with them. And you have people show up to court with nothing, and then the other person had paperwork, and inevitably Judge Mathis went with the one with paperwork. So I want to be able to show our work. I don't think we need to inundate anyone with reams and reams, but I want us to figure out, I need help figuring out what are the most relevant points from our research that we can use. I know, Nadine, you've done a lot, Ted's done a lot, several of you have done really great work. And so I open it up to the floor is the best way we can make that happen.
Can I just throw something out?
Sure.
We almost, I thought, first off, we should include all of Nadine's. She sent a full-on report.
Okay.
I think that we put that
As an
in
attack.
here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was looking for it, and of course, it's in my email somewhere, but Nadine might send it again. But she sent the heat maps that she showed last week.
Yeah, I mentioned your
And
heat
yes,
map.
Myron bragged on you, Nadine.
Yeah, I did,
So,
yeah.
the heat maps, he's very taken with them. We
Thank
have,
you.
I mean, Ted did very thorough research on disability rights, and I think we put that forward. I mean, it's just my opinion. You guys can obviously, like, I'm just your advisor, but I think
Okay.
we put the research that we did forward.
Okay. I
And
saw your message,
the
Jennifer, yeah.
steering committee is gonna take a look at what's there.
Okay,
And what the recommendations are and make sure that there's not a lot of overlap, right? We don't want, here's this set of people, you know, if we're gonna make it into a report, I think, putting everybody together. So like,
Okay,
I'll
cool.
show you, I mean, I have what I started the document.
okay.
Myron, which
Yeah.
I only put yours in and I didn't put Nadine's in and I didn't put Ted's in.
That's what I was,
Um,
we're getting around to the same place, we're in the same neighborhood now, still in the same street. It would be helpful to me, the way I think, if the report authors submitted to Rachel, I guess, or you, Martha, their report, and then put that all in one central site. And then that will give me, something that I could have all there together. And then we could attach them as Jennifer said, we can attach the full reports with our documents. So, I mean, with our final report, or I guess this is considered a draft for July, but it needs to be, I got the impression that it needs to be as final as possible, what we're going to present in July. So how does that sound to everyone?
So
Good.
let me just throw this out.
Go ahead.
So Rachel, if you look in the chat, she just put it, so Nate, we
I
have
saw.
Nadine's report.
Okay. See that, yeah.
And she's in our folder, we also have Ted's report.
Okay.
So all we need to do, I guess, Myron, is kind of put those together and do a little bit at the big front. It
Okay.
talks about how many meetings we had, what input we got.
Okay.
We need a little bit more about college student voting, I think, because I was looking around during the month.
Yeah.
And that's where we're a little weak because we don't have that survey. I
Mhm.
could probably get in and get some data about like how many 18 to 24-year-olds turn out to vote.
Okay.
That wouldn't take long to figure out based on the lists on the North Carolina Board of Elections website. But anyway, but I also, I'll let you guys talk. I've
Well,
talked a lot.
my question is, and Nadine, you might know, and has there been any kind of comprehensive survey or set of surveys as to college voters' voting habits? Like,
I've been working with NSOLV with Tufts, and they
Okay.
have that national survey voting, something like that, of college students.
Okay.
So I actually they sorry, their 2022 one, there's some messed up numbers, but I might be able to get all of the North Carolina data at least.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'll coordinate
I
with
have
you.
a bunch compiled that kind of like just what's available on another website, but I'll request from Nancy Thomas. She
Okay.
also, if you wanted to like have her come talk to the committee, I think she would do it, but she's like Nancy Thomas at Tufts University. I don't know if she's still working at Tufts anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
But I can email her, and I guess Adam there's like chaos going on over there, but they do like the most comprehensive survey where they actually match rosters from universities to the voter file.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's
yeah,
a
it could be.
big endeavor, but yeah,
Yeah.
they have a good amount of North Carolina schools in there.
Okay. Good. Yeah. That would be useful.
That would be great. So the
Yeah.
other thing that we might want to, Mary Ellen's point was well taken, that there's a lot of places where the precincts split the campus, right?
Mhm.
And I'm
Mhm.
wondering if there's been any research on what effect having a voting precinct on campus, it's a big deal in Greensboro with all
Yeah.
the campuses. And what effect
Well-
having a voting precinct on campus has
Mhm. Yeah.
on how many college students on that campus actually
Yeah.
vote.
That would be great. Okay. Yeah. We'll
Well,
coordinate on that.
we could
I'm working
get
on
the
that with
list.
Tufts. I'm
Good.
working on that specific question with Tufts.
Okay.
But that research is not like anywhere near done, but I presented something at APSA on North Carolina. So
Could you send it? Could
it,
we?
I'm gonna put it out there that it's not very good. It was more of like a pilot, and then I got connected with the Tufts people who have like much better data
Okay.
and
Were
shape
you
file.
using the election board, the,
I just mapped people under the age of 25 in areas around college campuses, like within a circle, like a 5-kilometer circle of
Ready,
a
uh-huh.
oh,
centroid
Nadine,
of a
I think
college.
that would be fabulous for this.
Yeah, but I'm
yeah.
going to say there was a lot of problems with it. So it's not absolutely perfect, but there
Mhm.
is something that I have that I can give
When
you.
are we gonna work together, Nadine? You've got so many good ideas. We've got
This
to
is
get
good.
together sometime. Anyway, sorry.
Okay. All right. The other thing that I wanted to cover, it actually slipped my mind. You know, I'm only 53, but you know, sometimes I feel 83.
Fight it, Myron, fight it.
Yeah. Okay. What I want to do is, let's see, our in-person meeting is July, what is it, 15th, somewhere around there. So what I want to do is have kind of I'll write up a summary. I'm going to try to have a draft ready for the committee to look at, hopefully by next Thursday around that time frame, and I'll send that out. And then I will attach, you know, in other words, it's going to be made to look very similar to our draft report. And I'll attach the research that y'all have done. And so that kind of give us a sense of where we are by next Thursday. Then I will request for y'all to amendments, additions, subtractions, and then we can, you know, have a good sense of where we are. What are we missing in all our discussion so far this meeting? Do we feel that what we've talked about so far kind of captures the flavor of what this committee wants to put forward?
So,
Okay. This is feeling a little too easy. Let's make a decision if we can on Felon and Eric. Let's start off with former felons, justice involved. How strong a statement do we want to make about let's ease restrictions, or do we want to approach that from this is what states are doing in terms of easing restrictions, these are the results they're looking at, and this is what the more restrictive states are doing. I'm open to input and suggestions on that.
well, I would think that if we're looking at the audience for the report and the fact that you're trying to impress the need something with people from opposing viewpoints, I would think the more that we put in that shows the effects.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
What happens to former felons, or felons, I guess. They're not really former. But what happens if they are not allowed to vote during this time period? What happens when they are allowed to vote? You know, that type of thing, I think would be what we need.
Yeah, because it kind of, right, because there's different perspectives on it. So kind of show, well, these are the different effects. So, you know, and without, okay, gotcha. Okay.
I think across the board, that's what we're trying to put out there. And that's why I think the research, because that is my field. You know, I'm a information literacy person. And the more information that we can give, the better, as long as it's accurate.
Agreed.
If it is opposing information, as long as both parts are accurate, the
Mhm.
better chance we have of people maybe finding something in the middle.
Okay, okay. Before I move to, I'm sorry, anyone else wanted to weigh in on that?
No, I want to second it. I had not considered it before you made your point about the more holistic effect on those individuals, that if there's a secondary benefit that can be expressed.
Mm-hmm.
I think that just, sorry to be repetitive here, but that
Okay.
speaks to what Mary Ellen said. So that's
Okay.
forth.
Okay, before I finally recovered my point, I had mentioned in my report that I gave yesterday about we would probably be working with the Civic Education Committee, and by the way, they already do a lot of great work. So we had, I guess, Ms. Garvin, who's on that committee, spoke yesterday. How should that be incorporated in the report? Just as part of the general summary, would you say? Mention that it necessarily involves working with the Civic Education Committee? Just basically that? Okay, okay. So don't overthink it, Myron. Just, okay, all right.
We'll figure out how to connect it, right, Martha?
Okay, okay. All right. Now, on the
This is a
subject of,
perfectly good point, right? That,
yeah,
yeah, sorry,
yeah.
I
Okay, no,
didn't
no,
mean
no,
to
no, you're good.
talk
You're
over
good.
you.
Oh, no, you're good. And so Eric, how strong do we, I kind of like, and this is just me, you know, speaking for myself, I kind of like the Jennifer approach where we say we need this system, that could be the recommendation. And then, but I feel if Eric is just sitting right there, we should talk about, you know, the just how it's looking, where Eric is in place, where it's effective, where it maybe is less effective. So include that. But the general recommendation would be we should have a system that works, coordinates with other states' voter rolls. And so we protect voter integrity, because that's really one of the big things that it's about. Does that sound good to folks? Y'all being the folks in this case.
Yes. Yes. And I think one of the aspects of North Carolina that makes that all the more important is how populous a state we are, number one, and how transient the population here is, number two. That those two
that's a good point.
factors really do necessitate some resource to ensure
Yeah.
those voter rolls. And then I think Alaska was very resistant to Eric as well, until there was a case made that a large military population would be well served with a resource that helped clean up the voter rolls.
Yeah.
And B, that the state didn't have to pay a lot of money for it because it was in place and vetted already.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
But I think the military population here, the size of the state, and the fact that it does address some of the fringe concerns about voter fraud.
Yeah, certainly. And,
Connect those dots
here,
for the audience.
I'm here in Fayetteville,
Writing
you know,
down what
Fort
you guys are
Liberty.
saying here.
Yeah.
So, let me see, I'm gonna share with you what I'm writing.
Okay.
So this, I just did a little supplement in my PowerPoint here,
Okay.
so. So Mary, that's what Mary Ellen had said, it could help with voter fraud, right? That it's a big concern is the double voting or voting across, you know.
Yeah.
Right, even if it's not a big problem. Right, but it can help increase confidence that I wrote, we're a highly transient state. So we need to look for some figures about military and then
Yeah.
how transient it really is.
Yeah, that's a great one, Ted, because you know, North Carolina, there's
great
some
idea.
superlative attached to the number of military and veterans here. I mean, we're like number one or right up there near the top. Of course, I'm in Fayetteville, Fort Liberty, so you know it's something that's very close to me. And also in terms of, you know, for lack of a better term, selling this
Yes.
to both sides,
Yes.
pointing out that this would help the military, which it would. I mean, we're not, selling, fool's gold here. It actually would help with those kinds of issues. I've seen residency and other things. Soldiers have come here and veterans have really sometimes had, one of my co-workers at the paper, a former co-worker, his dad is a retired military, and he had issues trying to get registered and get things squared away. So it is a real problem that something like Eric could help with.
Yeah, and actually, I'll give one other appeal to the emotional state of the issue. As a former military member, when you are in active duty and you show up on a new duty station, there are all sorts of resources to point a new troop to that location in the right direction, to get registered, to change residency, et cetera, et cetera. There is not support for spouses and dependents. And I think our state in particular, with the Marine and Army population, with spouses who have carried the weight for the last 20 years of deployments, there's been a lot of focus on ensuring that spouses are properly supported. And
That's right.
If there's one less thing for a spouse
Question,
to do.
Ted? Because that is really interesting.
That is
I
I
couldn't
didn't
agree
even know
more,
that.
Jennifer, with the big heart. Let me
Yeah.
ask you, is this something that would be addressed through, you think could be addressed through Eric? Or is this a separate thing that we need to be recommending? So
Maybe.
if we are voter access and registration, helping these individuals get registered is important.
Yeah, yes, and I guess I would say I think
So
some sort of outreach, or that maybe in the public education campaign that will come out of this,
it's
to
from the state, but also can be done through Eric. Through
Yeah.
a program that identifies people who are eligible to be registered to vote, which is
That's
what
right.
Eric does.
And as Ted points out, spousal support is a big, yes, looking at, the bottom line is that politics is going to be involved with, whatever. And, the president came here to speak at Fort Liberty with new initiatives to help spouses of military, with like the focus is mainly on employment opportunities, because that's also another place where the spouses of military really can suffer. They can be a star at whatever job they're in, and then they signed up for it. That doesn't make it easy. They move to the next station, and sometimes have to start from ground zero again. Start from zero again. So that could be. I like the idea of kind of keeping it with Eric, but we can certainly look at maybe pulling it out as well. One, I want to keep it with Eric because it helps to push forward Eric, I think, potentially. And two, I want to keep our recommendation list shorter rather than longer.
This will definitely be something I'm fairly certain that would be unique.
Okay.
I mean, if we did recommend some sort of program, who would do it?
Well,
Ted.
yeah.
Ted.
From my experience, there are organizations on military installations who are not Department of Defense, but are outreach to support Department of Defense personnel and families. So, there are any number of organizations that might fall to, but those are commander initiatives, right? So that's something that I think in a state, it comes to a state legislator reaching out to installation commanders saying, this is an important thing for you to consider for the troops on your base.
It reaches out to, what did you say? What did you reaches out to? Something
Installation commanders.
Installation commanders.
Yeah. And Martha, just to keep us out of trouble with somebody who knows this closely, I would not go so far as to say that there's no support for spouses and dependents. There's just not the same kind of support for spouses and dependents that there is for the actual active duty person. So for instance, when my wife moved to Alaska, she had days of prescribed in-processing meetings, but me as a spouse with my children, we just kind of followed along. There was not specific briefings and meetings to us.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Okay.
It's interesting, Ted. I didn't know of any research on that. There might possibly be.
It's definitely worth looking
We
into.
talk a lot about military voting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I do have a question that
Yeah.
this is for Nadine. Nadine, do
Okay.
you remember there used to be, or there has been a Republican effort to do list maintenance kinds of efforts that Chris Kobach started? Do you happen to remember what that was called?
I don't
Because I
remember.
was Googling around for it and I can't find it, but I know that he started one, and it's, from fairly not systematic. I mean, I've read all about ERIC and the way that it does its things, but I think I've read that the Republican effort doesn't list match the same way, and there's a lot of false positives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Okay. Okay. All right.
But we can always just say the other one is, okay. Is there anything else you want me to write here? And then I'll just make sure that Rachel gets this and Myron gets this.
Yeah,
I
I
just
think
put
that.
up something in the
Go ahead,
chat
Jen.
about military family support organizations.
Mhm. And-
Again, I don't know which ones are in North Carolina, but we might want to mention that in the report.
Yeah. And Tony put up some
Military
some
support
numbers.
organizations.
Mhm.
Martha, is it called voter registration cross-check program?
Yes, voter registration cross-check program. Let me probably.
Is that the Chris Kobach thing?
Yeah, I think they call it cross-check. I'm just Googling.
Oh,
it.
yeah, that's the one that Texas is entering. Oh, yeah, look, so I just found a governing article. I don't know if you can see this. I don't know what shows up on my screen.
yep, I see it.
Terry Family Support. Thank you for that, Jennifer. Okay, sorry, I want to put this link in our document here, though.
Okay. Okay.
And then I'll go back to this there. Okay, now back to, so I could, where to go? I'm sorry. Too many things at once. ADHD woman.
Superpower.
Okay. She's
Myron,
working
I just
eight-
thought of something, not to
Go ahead,
belabor
Dan.
this.
No.
Jennifer,
Go ahead.
our cybersecurity working committee, I think one of the positives in that title is also list maintenance, but I don't remember that we've addressed ERIC in that group with Stephen Tate, have we?
No, that group did not talk about ERIC at all.
Is Jennifer, do you know of any group talking about ERIC besides ours?
Not that I can think of.
Okay.
No, I think
Yeah.
that's all about list maintenance. But the cyber group looked at it from a hacking standpoint,
Right.
Mhm.
not from getting the right voters and canceling out double voters. They figured that was more list maintenance.
Just
Okay.
straight list maintenance. That's right.
Okay. Ted, you will be happy. This is an aside that I'm allowing myself. Ted, you will be happy to know that ranked choice voting was mentioned at the meeting. What group was that, Martha or Jennifer? Do y'all remember?
Counting votes?
Ranked choice.
There were two different committees that looked at it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think
it's a
primary
committee,
voting and
Better ballot, is that the group?
it's
That's-
the committee on counting vote and the committee on primaries and election day process. Both of
Okay,
them are
right.
looking at it.
And where it was kind of thought that maybe some progress could be, or if it's sold or recommended at all, it would be recommended or pushed on the grounds of using it in the primaries, where there would be less concern about one party getting an advantage over another. Use it in the primaries, but not necessarily the general election. So
Yeah,
there
right.
is that discussion, ongoing. So
It's great.
Well, to me, it would be much more effective in the primaries.
Same, yeah. Yeah, that's the way I see it as well, right? And I know Alaska has that system and,
Yeah.
yeah, so. Okay,
Well, it would have
anything?
saved a lot of
Yeah.
money, right?
Would have
I mean,
saved
I
a lot of
think
money.
that that's what they're talking, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a good way to market that. So, yeah, so. Okay, anything else for the good of the group for this meeting? I guess this is our last meeting as a committee, is that correct? Rachel?
So Rachel, yeah, explain to us what the future looks
Yeah,
like.
yeah, tell us what the calendar is.
Or Jennifer.
Yeah, so that's the last meeting that we have scheduled. When I set up the recurring meetings, I just scheduled them through June. So we don't have anything else on the calendar. I do think that the steering committee, and Jennifer can chime in, and Martha as well, we're planning to kind of meet following the July 15th
Okay.
in-person meeting to kind of go
Okay.
over what the
Makes
months
sense.
to follow will look like.
Okay. Okay,
Well, and so for us, I mean, it sounds like Myron, you said that you would have, and I'll talk to you after because I can
yes,
help
yeah,
you
I
with
can
some of
hang out.
these things.
Mhm.
But we have, yeah, we're going to be, well, you'll have a copy for everybody. So
Correct.
everybody will be able to go over it. And if you
Yeah.
really disagree with something, you
Mhm.
should make it known when can everybody access Google Docs?
Yes.
Yeah, is that doable for everyone?
Do we have a particular drive that we're using? I used it with the other committee once and then
Mhm.
complicated again.
Yeah. each
Rachel, is there
committee
like a
has
drive for this
Mhm.
committee?
Yes, there is a specific folder for the committee.
Oh, okay, there you go, okay.
Yeah, I'll drop the link in the chat. I will also include it in the meeting notes and in the email that I'll send following
Yeah.
up after
Thank you,
this.
Rachel.
He's great. So I will try to have that by next Thursday. I'm gonna jinx myself, so just understand that, consider me jinxed. This weekend is pretty light for me.
Woo, knock
As
on
journalists,
wood.
as journalists, when we work as weekend editor, we never use the Q word, which is, I hope it's gonna be quiet this weekend because then you're gonna have
Don't say it.
5 murders, So I believe this weekend would be very good for me to put a lot of work. So my goal is to have something for next Thursday we can all look at and amend and give our input on. So because I want it to really reflect the spirit of our discussion and the broadness of our research, because I think both have been very, very useful and very impressive. And I applaud everyone on the work they've done, the contribution they have done with this committee.
I want to add one more thing about
Please.
After July 15th. So
Mhm.
a big part of what we want to do is educate the public.
Mhm.
And a great way to do that is storytelling. We have had amazing conversations in all these committees. We have amazing people. I mean, the research that you all have done, Ted's story coming from Alaska, Nadine's research, all these things are really newsworthy. And
Mhm.
what we're hoping to do is highlight some of that. And we don't know if we're going to do short videos, if we're going to do short, news pieces, we'll highlight somebody once a week. So just be open to that. If you are really shy and don't want to have your name used anywhere else, again, let us know. But we do want to use the time that we're getting more public input from our town halls. So that's going to be going on in August and September.
Right.
That's going to be part of the report as well. So we're going to add all that in. But during that time, we really want to try to leverage the expertise accumulated by this commission to help educate people and to tell folks, I'm a regular citizen. I do all this research and wow, am I impressed by our system?
We
And
had a lot of that yesterday, actually.
Yeah, we
really
did. Yeah.
did.
We really
Mhm.
did.
Yep.
We really
Yeah,
did.
there's a lot. That was my impression as well. There's a lot our state, and I think many of you know this. There's a lot our state does right.
Mhm.
I did not leave yesterday's meeting believing there needed to be a big overhaul. I left yesterday's meeting thinking there needs to be some tweaks. I am let's try to get as many people to legally vote as possible. And so and I think that really has guided this committee in particular. And I sense that was the guiding principle for all the committees. So we do a lot right in North Carolina. I left actually feeling proud of our system, so.
That is so cool. Did we decide, speaking of, what we want to say about
Constitutional amendment?
Well, two things.
Yeah.
So the felon voting,
Mhm.
do we want to just say we're okay with how it is? Or do you want to just say we're going to communicate more? What about the whole idea of maybe doing so the Department of Corrections gives the election boards lists, and that's how they
Mhm.
figure out who can vote and who can't vote.
Mhm.
But then that means the person who may be still on probation or maybe almost done with whatever doesn't know if
They
he or
wouldn't be
she
on.
or they could vote. And I'm wondering if there's any benefit in saying something along the lines of we need to have some sort of centralized database so people know if they can vote or not.
Yeah.
So we don't have people
I
registering
favor
when they
that.
can.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Should we, so that was the recommendation. Well, that was something that came out of my class last semester from the kids that
Mhm.
were rather the adult student seniors who were doing research on, I call them my kids, on felon voting.
Yeah.
So I don't know what, I just want to check in. So if we're not going to say voting, we're not going to say anything about extending what we have. And that's good. That's
Mhm.
what I'm seeing coming out
Mhm.
and hearing. But we don't have anything about and I love what you said yesterday,
Mhm.
about the increased education and clear
Yeah.
language and whatnot. But do we want to say anything about that we need to create a list?
I mean, I think we should. I would open it up for the rest of the group, but I think it would be good because one of the big issues, and I've covered just reentry a lot as part of my job as an opinion editor, as a columnist. As I mentioned at the meeting, the vast majority of people who go into prison are going to get out of prison. So,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and where do they go? They go back to their home communities. Where else are they going to go? And there's stats that actually are pretty eye-opening of how many people read, especially for large counties like Cumberland, Wake and Mecklenburg, how many return each day, and that's the way it's supposed to work. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But in the meantime, we want to, obviously the biggest thing on their mind is not voting. I mean, let's just be honest. The biggest thing is free.
It's
They're
not.
free. And then second, the biggest concern is employment. That's a huge. So, and those kind of two things really come to the fore. But if we can make it in terms of the voter education piece easier for them, it needs to be almost turnkey. Well, here's what you do if you want to get your voting rights. And if you're interested in that, it's easier for them. So that's one thing I was looking at. And what you were just talking about, Martha, what the state can do is have available records for the officials who need to know this information to let them know who is eligible or who is soon to be
And
eligible.
the
If they
people
complete.
too, I was thinking, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So yes, I think so. Yeah. So
Thoughts, anybody else? So
Is
I
there
know I have some more things that I can give you to write about that.
okay.
Is there a
Very good.
secondary benefit to that, Myron, from an employment standpoint? So if there is a coherent usable list for both the individual and for Board of Elections, is it also
right,
usable for employers, for instance,
That's
to
a
be
good
able to?
question. I would have to look into that. I don't know, but
Because
that is a very
obviously
good
it's not, that's not a criteria for all of employment, but there are some employment opportunities that do require that you are complete with
Done.
parole and that you are,
question.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So one more thing,
Mhm.
Nadine asked, are we going to speak to the constitutional amendment? So Nadine?
I just know that's one of the reporters called me asking about changing the text of the North Carolina Constitution from like naturalized persons to citizens.
Oh, in terms of voting rights?
I don't know if it's going where it is in the process. But I don't know. I guess it passed the House. I don't
Okay.
know.
You think it would be not people who were naturalized?
They're changing the text so it says citizens in the North Carolina Constitution versus like you can. I don't have
Wait,
it.
is that saying, are they trying to say that someone who moved here and became a citizen, are they trying to suggest that that person wouldn't vote?
I think they're
No.
trying
Vote?
to say like
Oh, Mary.
only citizens can vote, and I guess it's a reaction to what's going on in DC.
It
Apparently
doesn't change
it's redundant.
anything.
It's
But
already illegal in the Constitution if you're not a citizen. So
exactly. So this is
redundant.
going to create misinformation because now people are going to
That's
be,
it.
oh, is North Carolina had they allowed non-citizens to vote before this amendment? So I don't know
scares
where the reporter, after I candidly said, like, I think this is stupid, she said that she thinks it's a Republican like strategic move to get
Okay,
people to show
I'll
up
actually
on
look into
election
that,
day
yeah.
to
Yeah,
like change the Constitution to say citizen.
yeah. Okay, that's certainly an area. I'm not sure the committee is really, especially this late in our process, to take that head on. But I'm telling you, as an opinion editor, that is something I'm interested in talking about and clearing up because it
When it
does sound
doesn't
like a
change.
disinformation type campaign.
It
What were you
doesn't
saying,
change a
Mary?
thing.
Well, politically, of course, the Democrats have discovered that women's rights are getting them more attention and support. They're
Mhm.
focusing on that. The Republicans have discovered that immigration is a big hot button for their side. And so they're looking wherever they can to raise the
Yeah.
issue of immigration.
Yeah.
And this is one more example.
And I guess
Yeah.
DC allows non-citizens to vote in some local matters.
Local elections.
And
Yeah,
so
I think New York may do as well.
Maryland, some
Local,
cities.
yeah.
Mhm.
In local elections.
but
In
I
local
can see it
elections.
as
Interesting.
maybe it's also confusing people about who can and
Who
can't
and
like
cannot vote.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it says citizen, sure, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like it does fall under the voter access
Yeah.
purview because it is sort of like our question is about who's like getting the people who are in the electorate to the polling place. But now
Well-
it's creating this like a patina
Yeah,
that there's
Or worse.
fraud or the wrong people are voting.
Yeah. Yeah, and
And
Nadine, in my report that I presented yesterday, I did mention in the voter education piece, clearing up misinformation. So it could certainly merit mention in the summary at minimum in the report. So yeah, thank you for that. I wasn't even aware that was
I didn't
being
know I
talked
was
about.
aware of it before the reporter just called me
Mhm.
and asked like
I wasn't
Yeah.
aware of it
think about
either.
this.
Yeah.
But I guess it might I don't know if it will become a constitutional amendment, but it's working its way through the legislature.
No,
And
it sounds like a classic sort of position bill. It's like what Jennifer was saying. It's just,
Yep.
make the other party, put the other party on the defense with this legislation that's not going to pass. But at the same time, it is a thing that's been written and created. So it's worth writing about and exposing. And it can certainly be mentioned in sort of the misinformation section, which I don't know how robust that section is going to be of our report. So thank you for that. Thank you for that.
I mean, you could even, you could include one sentence in the report saying, here are the requirements for any citizen to vote.
Mhm.
And, clearly non-citizens are not allowed to vote. No further legislation is necessary.
Right.
Whatever is in the Constitution.
Something like
Yeah,
something like that.
And that we as a committee believe that any language or barriers to access or understanding are detrimental to the voting process.
Mhm.
And actually, the sponsors of the bill said the same thing, that it doesn't change anything. It's just changing words. It was, the article that I read was
The
preposterous.
voter turnout.
Yeah.
Preposterous.
That's
That's
what
a
it might
close second to patina.
All right.
That was 3
Okay.
mentions now.
Yeah. It's
How
a
many
great
times
word.
can we get patina in the final report, guys?
I'm gonna go home and use it and see what my wife thinks of.
Let me see. No further language is necessary.
All right.
at this time.
Okay, y'all, anything else before we part for this meeting?
Can I make sure I know exactly what we're gonna get?
Yes.
So Nadine, were you gonna try and send me some stuff on college student, or send stuff on college student voting?
I actually put a link in the chat, but I can send it to you as well. It has some good figures. I looked through it quickly. It has some good figures at the end, but it is not like in a publishable
Oh,
state.
you did put a link in the chat, but I couldn't access it.
Oh, no? Okay.
I went to it and it said I had to log into
Okay. That
UNCW.
okay. That was my share link, but of course they have to make everything like extra difficult. So I will.
Because it's a university and, you know,
Yeah.
You
bureaucracy.
don't want academic fraud either. You don't want somebody sneaking into those reports.
Someone might steal Nadine's work.
Yeah. Rachel,
Or
at risk
change it.
of exposing that I know less about Zoom than I probably should at this point, since the pandemic, are links and whatnot in the chat, will that be available for us to return to, or for me to return to later?
I can include all of the links that have been posted or submitted in the chat in the
Okay.
meeting notes, so that
Gotcha. Okay.
you all will
Excellent.
have access to them.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. All right. Appreciate it. Okay,
Hey, Myron,
everybody. Yes.
can you stay on for a little bit after and let me just, can we, you don't have time?
I
Can we
don't
talk
have
later?
time. Yeah, and what threw me
Okay.
off today was I thought I was, well, there's good news. It wasn't good news for me the best news for me today, but the good news for the voting process in North Carolina is that the radio station that the Observer is partnered with, WIDU, we have started a new 24-week program, Election Central. And yeah, so me and a couple other folks, one of our panelists is actually Dale Folwell, the treasurer, you know, who ran for governor. So it's a very balanced panel, and
That's
the
great.
goal is to have not so much heat. There's a little bit of that, but a lot of light, you know. So and we got to a rousing start. It just took way longer than I thought, you know. So that's radio sometimes. So anyway, that's what. And then that, you know, now when I have to, there's family things I got to do. But yeah, we can talk later this
We'll
evening if
talk.
that
We'll
works for
talk
you.
later.
Yeah,
Get your
yeah.
get your committee members on that radio show.
Oh yeah, certainly. Yeah,
Actually,
Can we
certainly. Yeah.
listen to it? Is it
It's a
recorded?
guest format. Yeah, it's the Facebook Live is posting. We recorded it so it appears on Facebook. So it was recorded, pre-recorded, but that should be available very shortly. But I'll definitely send out the link to it to members.
Yeah, I'd love
So,
it. I'd
yeah,
love it.
Yeah. So yeah. So anyway, okay, everybody. Thank you. It's been a great meeting. Very productive meeting. Fun to see everybody. And again, just great work. Just where you made my job extremely easy. So thank you. All right. Y'all have a good one.
Be well,
Thank you.
everybody.
Okay.
Bye.